Hiring remote staff is not a new concept. Companies get access to a wider talent pool, can oftentimes arbitrage wages, and can find people who are eager to work with you. The downside is managing those people. The fact that oftentimes they're not even located in the same country adds complexity, especially when it comes to payroll or even basic HR functions. I'm Jane Singer, and it's so nice to have you back with us here on A Seat at the Table, where we sit down with industry leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs in order to gain firsthand insights that will help us grow our careers and our business. Today we're joined by Richard Hogben, founder of Worldwide VA, a company that helps businesses recruit and manage virtual staff, from assistants to CFOs. In this episode of A Seat at the Table, Richard will be discussing best practices for managing virtual staff or remote workers. He'll also be talking about the key advantages of sourcing talent from outside your local area and some of the biggest mistakes that companies make when working with virtual staff and how to avoid them. So let's sit down with Richard and find out why we might want to look at the global talent pool. So let's sit down with Richard and find out why we might want to look at the global talent pool when recruiting for our next position. Richard, thank you so much for joining us here on A Seat at the Table. It's fantastic to have you on the show. I am really excited to learn more about the subject that we'll be focusing on. It's something that's very relevant to just about anybody who is running a small to even medium-sized business nowadays. And a lot of us are, even if it's just a side hustle. Let's just first start off perhaps with why it is so difficult to find talent nowadays, because I think in the past, you could always find people to do just about any kind of a job, right? People wanted to be either entry level, people wanted to be doing something part-time perhaps, or maybe they just wanted a reliable job. And now it seems it's gotten complicated. So let's first address that, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Jane, it's amazing to be here today, and thank you so much for having me on your show. I've been looking forward to this for the last 2 weeks, so it's really good. And it's a very important question that you raise, actually, because it's a conversation I have every single day with business owners and higher management people. And you're right, it's not just your SMEs, it's your mid-sized businesses. And I personally think it's a change in, it's a change in what people's expectations are. So when you go to recruit somebody, for example, it's more about what you can do for them now, not what they can do for you. So the dynamics has changed. You're right. 8 years ago, you could put an advert on some of the big job sites out there and you might get 100, 200 people applying. And then you spend 4 or 5 days trying to sift through all that. Now you might get 15 or 20 people. And out of those 15 or 20 people, I would probably say maybe 5% actually do even want the job in the first place. So, it's tricky. Recruitment is tricky. And when you do find great talent, you want to keep hold of them. But the problem being, Jane, it's a big, big problem, is when your competitors have got an amazing bit of talent, guess what? They're going to poach that amazing bit of talent and they're going to pay them more than they're worth. And that's what we're finding with recruitment, that recruitment costs are going higher and higher and higher.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right that, nowadays people approach a job. It's ironic, really, about more of, they walk into the employer. This is what I want. This is what I need. What can you do for me? Which is certainly a reversal of any situation I faced when I was looking for jobs. But like you said, that's one of the realities of today's job market.
It is. And to me, it doesn't matter what vertical, what sector you're in. Every business owner I speak to in all the different businesses and verticals out there are having exactly the same problem. Whether you're going out for a drink with your colleagues or whether you're having a dinner party, you're going out for a meal or you're networking, the hot topic is always how you find staff, how's your staff recruitment? That's what everybody's talking about. So there are so many. It is the right of entitlement that people have nowadays. I remember back in the day when people would come to you and go, I really, really want to do this. I'm so excited. This is my career. I want to come in right at the bottom and work my way right up to the top. what we're finding now, Jane, is that they don't want to start at the bottom. They want to come in mid to high way up and get that salary, but they've got no experience. So does that, hopefully that sort of makes sense with regards to when everyone I talk to, it's exactly the same things, the same conversation.
Well, that's very true. I hear that all the time myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
Certainly, you're in the UK. I hear this from
Mhm.
the US market, the
Yep.
same thing. It's really challenging. Now, you suggest that the sort of the I don't know what you call the answer to this, perhaps, is to outsource some of these jobs, right? To be able to hire virtual talent. So
Mhm.
therefore, you're really reaching out to a much bigger talent pool. Now, I think that's a very interesting concept, and certainly we hear of people doing that. But when you look at that, what would you say are the jobs that are most suitable for outsourcing? Because obviously there are certain jobs you can't outsource. Common sense says something like being a shop assistant. But
Mhm.
which jobs do you feel within an organization tend to work really well on an outsourced basis?
Well, you say shop assistants, so but if you look in shops nowadays, it's all computerized. But
True.
yes, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, again, this is a question I get asked a lot. So the business that we're in has pretty much 6x the last 12 months. This is
Wow.
absolutely stratospheric. This is going through the roof because, and I'll come to all the pain points that people have, employers have, but yeah, so people say, what can they do? Exactly that question you asked me. And I turn around and say, do you know what? It's not what they can do, it's what they can't do. Okay. So I'll give you a great example. Take the real estate market. Okay. The real estate market in the whole of the world, it's there. People live in houses and so on. Well, the majority of the world. So if you take a property manager, it's probably a great example. Okay. So do property managers physically need to be on the ground? Well, no, yes and no. So you can outsource the element where they have to go to the property and check the property. Okay. But what about all the legislation? What about the paperwork? What about the lease renewals? What about the leases? What about the answering the phone? What about the booking in viewings? What about getting the viewing feedback? What about calling the owner up and telling the owner what's going on? This can all be done by a virtual assistant. Now, I suppose I want to touch on this, Jane, because people have this misconception of virtual assistants, 20 people sat in a call center, or 100 people sat in a call center, and you don't know who you're going to get. And we looked at that and went, that's not what we want. This isn't what business owners want. They need an actual person working remotely from home in various different countries out there, but it's theirs. They can have work part-time or full-time. And this person is a member of staff. And I'll come on to it in a bit how you look after them. But regards job roles, my CFO is a virtual assistant, my ops manager is a virtual assistant, my sales manager is a virtual assistant, my call center is a virtual assistant. So pretty much every job within my business is virtual. I'm the only person in the UK.
Wow.
I've got to say, pretty amazing. And I'll give you a model. Okay, I'll give you a model that works well. And we've been working with a real estate company for the last 12 months. Okay. And this real estate company were having the problems of trying to recruit. They were saying, I just can't find, and I'll give you an example, a property manager. And if I do find a property manager, they want between 1 and 2 times what you'd expect to pay them if you just drag them off the street. Okay. So he said, this guy rang me up and said, can you find me a property manager? I said, absolutely, they're ten a penny. So what do you mean a ten a penny? I can't find anybody. It's like I'm paying 15% recruitment fees. I'm paying this. I'm doing this. I'm spending hours and hours trying to find them on the job sites. I've even tried to headhunt, but they won't come. How can you find me people? Now, in some of the countries we deal with, the talent that we have is absolutely amazing. These are graduates. These are, qualified degree people who have worked in the industry for 4 or 5 years. But what we find in their own countries, the job market is, let's say a third of them unemployed, and they really, really, really want to work. So we're offering people an opportunity to work from home, and generally you have it's mothers or fathers, and they will have nannies because we pay them a lot more in their country than they get in their country. And they're great. They don't have the commute into work in the morning and they don't have to pay for lunches. They're at home, they've got their equipment, they've got their internet, they've got their own room. They are loving life. So when we put them in front of employers, the employers are going, these people are brilliant, and they stay.
We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And as somebody who herself lives a lot of the time in Asia, I'm aware of some of the talent that you might have where you can arbitrage on salary, so to speak, where you can get somebody who is talented, but the actual salary rate in the country where they are is a lot less than in the country where the job may be. So therefore, you can afford to pay them what's considered a very good rate in their country, but it's actually quite affordable. And like you said, they're happy to have the job. It's because you're able to pay them, quite well. So they feel like, gee, this is a good job. I'm happy to have this job. As opposed to perhaps in your home market, where even when you're paying, like you said, a little bit above what the competitive rate is, the people are still disgruntled.
They are. No, they absolutely are. And the great thing is, Jane, is that these virtual assistants, they're getting 5-star reviews for the clients. They are, the feedback from the clients they're speaking to is like, everyone's going, wow, I can't believe this is happening. And, they're employing the second and third one, the case study I mentioned before. This person's now got 5 virtual assistants because his business is growing and he needs the talent to be able to grow. But yeah, it's really important. One of the things I think is really important is the culture. I've got 2 massive values. The first one is treat people how you wish to be treated. Okay. And the second one is if you say you're going to do something, do it. And, they're basic, absolute basic, Jane, but that's what a lot of our VAs, or not a lot of them, all of them, pride themselves on.
I think that's really important. Now, in terms of working with somebody who is not physically there, what do you have to do differently? A lot of us who've been used to working with people on site have a certain way of working with those people, and it's easy because they're there, and if you have something you want to show them or teach them or discuss with them, they're right there. It's a little bit more complicated, I suppose, particularly in the beginning when you're onboarding somebody and they're far away and you can't really sit down in the same way. How do you suggest people approach that? What would be best practices?
What a great question, I've got to say, and a lot of people say the same thing. Now, the onboarding it's a breeze. It really is a breeze. Okay. And the most important thing you need to do is be able to have the eye contact. Okay. Whether that's a Teams call, whether it's a Zoom call, whether it's a FaceTime, whatever, Google Meet, whatever platform you use, it's really important that you check in the morning with them. Okay. And you check in the afternoon with them, and you always have an open line of communication. So when you're onboarding, I always say to clients, everyone's got different CRMs, everyone's got different processes and systems. So I always say to clients is when you're training them, record it on Loom, okay, or some kind of similar video platform, and start collating a bank of training videos. So if your VA, for whatever reason, forgets how to do something, because we're all human, we make mistakes, we forget, they can go back to that Loom video and watch and go, oh, yes, I know that. And what they're not then doing is bugging the client all the time or bugging their employer all the time because they're just re-watching something. So the onboarding, we've never, ever, ever had an issue with onboarding. Clients actually fall into it really, really naturally. So yeah, it's pretty seamless. The main thing is get your systems and processes absolutely up to date. Start recording those Loom videos, talk them through, tell them what your values are and tell them how you expect them to be. And you know what? It works.
I think that's such great advice. And I hadn't really thought of the idea of doing those Loom calls, or even if you're doing a Zoom call, recording it so that they can have it for future reference. And you're right, having system documentation, process documentation in place even if it's just doesn't have to be fancy, right? But just a simple sort of a tutorial library, whatever you want to call it, so that people can refer to that. I
Yeah.
think that's really, it's such great advice. But I love the idea that when you've actually had a call with somebody to explain something, that you save it and share it with them so that they can have that on hand and go back and listen to it again or watch it again if you had done a screen share and showed them how to do something. That's really brilliant advice.
I think in all fairness, what's really important is making sure they understand it. So another way you can do something is show them, okay? Then get them to write the process for you. So say, right, now you send me the standard operation procedure, please, on how you've done that. And then you know they've actually understood it when it comes back and it's perfect. But just to add to that, Jane, we have clients that have TVs in the office, that have the VAs on the TV and a camera so the VAs can see the team as well. And it really, really brings us together. They might be 10,000 miles away, okay? But they are such, they're friends. These people are friends, they're colleagues, and it's amazing with the culture and the community that we have within our company where everyone just goes, "This is the best thing I've ever done in my whole life. This is amazing. I love being a virtual assistant."
I think it's really great because, it's interesting. In the West, a lot of people don't want to have the camera on when they're on a Zoom call. I have one woman who, she's a customer of ours, but she was talking about how they do these team meetings, right?
Yeah.
And people they actually report to her and she'll be holding a meeting and there, some of those people don't want to have the camera on. I'm like, what's that about? They're at a proper meeting by a company that you're employed by and your boss is hosting this and you don't
Mhm.
want to have the camera on. But I think that you're right. When you're working with virtual assistants, a lot of these people want that connection. And
Yeah.
the idea that even like you're saying, at least part of the day, having what you may call loosely open camera. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it feels like a co-working environment because even if you're not talking to that person, you can see the other people. Even if you're just watching them sitting there at their desk typing, there is something about that where you don't feel as isolated. I think that's a great idea. I love that.
And you know what? The scenario used before about people not putting a camera on, well, I mean, it's rude.
Yes, it is.
Ultimately, the equipment we have, pretty much every single laptop, every single desktop has a webcam. I've got a webcam here and it follows me around the room. It's a bit freaky, but it follows me around the room. But each to their own. But I mean, I insist that everybody has the webcam on in the morning. When I walk around some of my offices, I'll say, "Why's your webcam not on?" Or not, "Why's your webcam on?" Sorry. It's like I walk up to the machine and I'll give them a wave. I can't go in the background, "Hiya," and they'll go, "Hiya, how are you?" Because you've got to integrate them. You've really, really, really got to integrate them because people have a misconception that the VAs might be going shopping or doing something they shouldn't be doing or not working or whatever. So it's another way to put the trust element in with the employer. And the employer goes, "Well, I can see you working hard." And they haven't got, all sorts of things in the background going on. They've got to have noise cancelling headphones. And that's important. We'll come to the equipment bit in a bit, what they need. But, it's really important that the employer can go, "Do you know what? This actually works." And it works really, really well. And again, I'll talk to you about the productivity shortly, but there's loads to tell you, Jane.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I think that, realistically, it's a two-way street. The
Mm,
employer has to be very clear on what the job description is, what the deliverables are, what the timeline
mhm,
is, be able to,
mhm.
invest in the training of this person initially and then follow up training and so forth. But at the same time, the person who is working remotely also has to have skin in the game and understand that if you're being hired to do this at this time, you need to be doing that and not doing it while you're cooking dinner or while you're driving the kids to school or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you have to
yeah.
be both sides have to really be open about it and honest and willing to give their best.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll tell you this. I mean, that when we're scouting talent, okay, we make it very, very important that they understand what remote working is, what it looks like. Because some people think, "Oh, it's great. I can do a couple of hours here and I can go off here and I can, I can pick up the phone there or watch a bit of Netflix, whatever it might be." It's a case of, no, you can't. I want you from 8:30 a.m. till 5:30 p.m. You get a 45-minute lunch break or however long you decide. And you can get a 10-minute break in the morning to make a coffee and one in the afternoon. Exactly what you would expect in an office. And I want you 24, no, not 24, I want you by the phone. I want you doing this and need to be available. So when we onboard the VAs, we make it very clear that we will be tracking their PCs. Okay. So
Right.
when employers say, how do I know they're working? Which is very simple. We have software that we tell the VAs that we will ask them to install a separate profile. Okay. So let's install a profile called Worldwide VA. And in that profile, we just track that profile. So whatever they do in their personal time, we don't want to know. Okay.
Right.
It's only during the week and or weekends or whenever they work. But we know what time they start, we know what time they finish, we know what sites they're being on, and we know when they're well, we know when they're passive. So right now, Jane, you and I are passive because we're not touching the keyboards, we're not moving our mouse. So you have to sort of look at it a little bit with an open pair of spectacles and go, well, actually, yeah, they were on a call, so they weren't passive. But it's great, and I'll tell you, 99% of clients don't even look at it because they're so impressed with the output and how productive these VAs are that they just go, can you clone this person, please? Because she or he is amazing. And we get that so many times. It's an amazing conversation to have.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I think that what you're saying is very accurate based on what I know of the situation. And I haven't
Mhm.
really hired people remotely in a very, very long time. But we do have people who work with us from overseas that we hired 15 to 20 years ago and still with us. And yeah, it's just work that could be outsourced, didn't need someone on site to do it, for example, graphic design. And
Mhm.
so we
Mhm.
found people back in the US, actually, oddly enough. I live in Asia and I
Yeah.
outsource stuff to the US. I mean, who does that, right? But there you go.
Yeah.
But
Amazing. Amazing.
the work is sent to these people. They know what to do. They do it. They
Yeah.
send it back. Everybody's happy. And
Mhm.
like I say, ultimately it comes down to the deliverables, as you're saying. Is the work done on time? Is the work done up to standard? But then at the
Mhm.
same time, like you said, you do want to be able to, at least in the early stages, be able to monitor integrity. And is the person actually at the desk during the hours they're supposed to be? Or are they not doing things and then telling you, oh, I didn't do it because I don't understand how to do it, when in fact they weren't really at their desk?
Well, you're absolutely right, and I think from our point of view, when I first started off with Worldwide VA, in fact, before Worldwide VA, when I started employing virtual assistants I had a real estate business, and I went to a certain country, and I thought, okay, great, brilliant, they're going to be cheap, they're going to be amazing, they're going to be fantastic. That wasn't the case. Okay, there's an old saying: "Buy cheap, pay twice."
Right.
And in this scenario, that definitely was the case because I found these. I wouldn't let them speak to my clients. I wouldn't let them be front
Mm,
facing. I was petrified of what my clients think if they think I'm outsourcing this.
right.
But some of these VAs would disappear. Some would have typhoons. Some would have dogs in the background and sheep running around in the background, going, "What is all this about? What is all this about?" And so I quickly stopped it. But then when sort of the COVID times hit, I went, actually, this has to work. It does work. So I started off again, and then I went to different countries and I did a lot of research, and I went to people whose culture was the same in the UK or the US or Australia, and who the clients would actually have a good laugh with and they could build a great rapport with. And it took me a long time to achieve it, but we've now pretty much got the perfect model where clients are going, I just can't believe that you found me such a superstar. You mentioned earlier, Jane, you're opening the whole world up, the whole world of talent. That's billions and billions of people. And these people aren't just looking at this as a job, they're looking at this as a career. They're looking at this to grow and grow and grow within, to make their careers even bigger. And we've got VAs now managing other VAs and teams and even teams in the office because they're so brilliant. And clients are going, yeah, the cost is important, don't get me wrong, and there's big cost savings, but the productivity, you can't turn around to your colleague for a 5 minute chat around a coffee machine or 20-minute chat around a coffee machine because you're working at home. So your productivity goes up and goes up. And, even the people in the offices are going, I can't believe how much support and help I'm getting.
I think what you're bringing up is important. And I think that it's also important that people listening to this understand that you're talking about people who would be hired more or less on either a full-time or a contract, a part-time contract basis, not sort of a freelance kind of thing like you might find on job boards, right? Like
Yeah.
Upwork or Fiverr or things like that, which is a little different situation that I think what you're talking about is something where more time has gone into vetting the individual prior to hiring them on.
1,000,000%. And that's why it works. I mean, don't get me wrong, Fiverr, work on all those are great. If you want a logo design, you go to Fiverr. If you want someone to design a website, you go to Upwork. So they absolutely have their place. And that's, I think, where the misconception comes in of what virtual assistants can actually do. You know, clients come to us and they say, we want to integrate someone in our business. And how do we do it? We find out exactly who's going to manage them. And this is a process. Say, right, who's going to manage this person? Because we need to match their culture and personality with the VA we're going to find. And it's a massive skill. Our talent scouts are really, really, really talented. In the first 5 seconds, Jay, when someone's going to work out. But we would put a post out on various sites and we would get potentially 250, 300 plus people applying for this role. Now, out of those 300 people, let's say, probably 80% of them are no good. Okay, they're not right for this role, or they're applying because, I quite fancy having a go at that, but I'm not sure. But we narrow that down to generally about 11 great people that will absolutely hit their personality. And we scout all the time. We then make sure they've got the right equipment. They're not on the phone. They're not in a car. They haven't got screaming children in the background and dogs barking left, right, and center and really bad traffic noise. Because these things are really important. Clients don't want this,
Right.
and customers don't want this. So for us, it's making sure that, they're not joining a call with a phone and they're moving around and they've got, but they've got to come smart. They've got to come professional. You've got to dress smartly. You've got to dress for an interview that you really, really want this job. And what we then do is we shortlist those 11 or 12 people to 3, okay? And we will put those 3 people in front of the client. And we say to the client, more often than not, the client says, it's so hard to choose which one I want. And sometimes we've actually had clients taking both of them, saying the third one I would probably take, but I just can't afford it right now. But I'm going to take 2 because I can't believe the talent. So yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So if someone were going to work with your company, they decide, okay, I think I would like to be able to expand the base of applicants for a role that I have open. And so therefore I would love to be able to understand what you could do, Richard. How would I start working with you? What would someone's first step be?
Okay, it's a very good question. I mean, the first step would be we would jump onto a discovery call. Okay, and we'd find out exactly what makes a business tick. What is it? Why did you start the business in the first place? So we get the ins and outs. We get their inside leg measurement, not quite, but pretty much. We found out everything about the business. Once we've done that, we then obviously talk about who's going to manage them and so on. And interestingly, we will then find that right talent for the business owner, okay, or for the higher management, as it were. And I think from sort of working with us, we're not a recruitment agent. I think that's really important to put out there. We actually work with you day in, day out. It's a management service we offer. So we take all the HR away from you, okay? You don't pay any taxes or national insurance or, government taxes and payroll taxes and Medicare and anything else. We sort all that out for you. So when people say you take the HR away, absolutely we do. So every month or for the first 2 weeks when we place your VA, we will check in with the VA daily. It's really important to make sure we iron out those bumps in the road. Okay. And we check in with the client weekly for the first 2, 3, 4 weeks to make sure the client's okay as well and make sure it's seamless and they're joining up. After that, we then check in with the VA and the client monthly. So call it a one-to-one. Okay. So the process is slick, it's smooth, it works. And we know that, don't get me wrong, you can employ someone, they might tell you that they're amazing on their CV. Then they start and you go, what have I employed? What is this? So if that happens, by the way, it's not a problem because we will replace that VA very, very quickly. But because of the check-ins, we know if it's going the right way or if it's not going the right way. So to work with us, it's really important to understand the client. It's really important to know exactly what they want. I'm a great believer in, you might not even think this on the podcast, but I'm a great believer in with, you got two ears and one mouth. You should use it that way. Listen to what they want. Listen to exactly, right down to the fine art detail. We will send out the job description to the clients if they haven't already got one. And there are so many positions. And we say to clients, think of everything you're doing and then think of 80% of the stuff you can delegate, because that's the stuff your VA can do. And the clients go, what? So I can get 80% of my time back? Yes, you absolutely can. And you trust these people because in some respects, I always say to everybody, employ people who are better than you. Absolutely. Employ people who are better than you, because I don't know everything. And that's what I always say to our clients. So hopefully that sort of gives you a great answer to how clients can work with. It's seamless. We take the headache from you.
I think that's really interesting. Now, just one more question. When you're looking at all the different job categories that you have placed with virtual assistants, most likely there's some that work out better than others, right? Some jobs that you can easily find a virtual assistant, it usually works out well, and other things that tend to be a little more challenging, not impossible, but more challenging. What do you see as the ones that work out better and the ones that are take a lot more effort to get that going as a virtual job?
Okay, I mean, again, it's a brilliant question because we love a challenge. We absolutely love a challenge. So administrators are probably, it's a low-hanging fruit. We can go out there and they are, it sounds, I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but they're 10 a penny. Okay.
Right.
But administrator with 7, 8, 9, 10 years experience, we can get them pretty much within 2 weeks. The process takes between 2 and 4 weeks in all fairness, but we can get someone with experience within your business in 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, let's say. Okay. I don't want to overpromise. So yeah, they do things like they will answer the phones, they will manage your diary, they'll manage your emails, they will do the HR within your own company if you want them to. And these are payroll assistants, these are CFOs, these are bookkeepers, these are accountants, these are client account administrators. So for administrators, they're pretty straightforward. Okay. Now, interestingly, we're getting more inquiries now for higher level. Okay. So, CFO is a great example. My CFO is fantastic. I'm very lucky to have her. But someone says, can this be done remotely? I said, well, yeah, of course it can. Do you have Xero? Yeah, I've got Xero. Okay. Are your bank accounts online? Yes, they are. Okay. So when you're in the shop, you're at a store buying something, take a picture on your phone, send it straight to your accountant. Okay, they don't need to physically be in the office. And it's amazing how many companies I've seen who are still on paper. They still take the docket to the accounts department going, no, stop. So the more challenging positions, yes, would be the higher level management positions, but we can absolutely find them, And if we can't find them, by the way, or if you don't like them, you don't pay a penny. Simple as that.
Yeah, so interesting. Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining us here. I think a lot of people are probably thinking, I wonder how this might work for my business. So thank you so much for sharing this.
You're more than welcome, Jen.
Really been a pleasure.
Thanks for being with us here today on A Seat at the Table. If you'd like to see some of the other episodes, head on over to our podcast website at seat.fm. That's SEAT.fm. There's also a link here in the show notes. And if you're thinking that you'd like to be a guest on the show, you'll find information on how to apply there as well. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Jane Singer, and I will see you in the next episode.